Two, three, four. Okay, Guy, how you doing, mate?
Oh, I'm doing well, mate. How are you?
Yes, very well. So, some of the long-term viewers, you'll remember Guy. Guy is one of the original Awakened Braves from way back when.
From way back when, yes. We've been on quite a journey.
Yes, quite a journey. So, we're going to be speaking about um, excursions, sojourns into the wonderful world of DMT.
It's like a
And
throwback.
yeah, and then we'll probably be speaking about some weird and wacky things, which are out of body experiences, paranormal, supernatural, something like that, depending how long or little it takes us to get through the DMT extravaganza.
Yeah, sounds good, mate. So take it away. So just so everybody knows who's watching, it's been about probably 7 years since I last did a DMT trip. Because I kind of got into this headspace where it was hang up the phone, I don't need to do this anymore. And then 7 years later, I figured, you know what? I missed the realm. I managed to source myself an experience. And today I've been and done it. I did have a bit of a warm up experience a few days ago, but today I went and did the big one up underneath a tree near my new house, which is really cool. It's out of the way, it's in nature. No leaf blowers, which was nice.
Yes, up in the hill, so you got a good vantage point to look down. It was all beautiful, green and lush. Now, you said the last time you did it was 7 years ago. Was that with me down in the beach on Portugal?
Around that time, that weren't the last time I did it. After that, a few
Right.
times, but that was around that period of time.
And so on that particular occasion, we both saw some bearded bloke in a toga reclining in the clouds.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's really, really bizarre because for us to both have that experience, then that tells us that there's something that is other than in our psyche.
mm. Interesting. You know, I've learned a lot over this last 7 years that I didn't know about DMT and about the psychology and about the realm. And I think people have been mapping it quite a lot. I mean, I forgot his name. It's Dan Gola's mate, the one that's mapping the DMT realm with the DMTX program.
Andrew,
And obviously,
Andrew Collingo,
something like that, I believe.
yeah,
I
he just
suppose.
wrote a book, and it's I think he named it after the Terence McKenna saying something like "death by astonishment."
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm not. I'll have to read that. Then again, I keep saying I have to read books. It never quite happens, does it? But we'll get there one day.
Right.
Uh, I'm a kinesthetic learner. So coming back to my point though, is I've been intrigued by it, and I've wanted to do a few more investigations into it because obviously I'm older now. Life's gone on a bit. I've my life's changed quite a bit. I'm a lot more balanced these days, and I figured with that new kind of mindset, it'd be interesting to get into the DMT realm again and see what happens. And wow, what a difference! It's insane. But the bearded dude in the cloud, bearing in mind, um, I no longer think that's archetypal because originally I used to think that was archetypal related, like because we've all been conditioned to see this god type being in
Yeah.
the cloud. Your receptors are open, and you're getting access to your subconscious or the collective consciousness, as which or the collective unconscious, as Carl Jung used to say. But I don't. I no longer think that's the case. I think there's actually a lot more to it than that. I'm not saying that that's not or an aspect of the realm, if you will, but I've got a different theory on it. But I can get onto that maybe later in the conversation. But yeah, it was an interesting experience, and I've got a lot to say about today, actually. So,
Well, okay. Seeing as we've started on this episode that we had when we was on the beach down in Portugal, let us, for the benefit of the viewers, just clarify a little bit of that. Now, when we'd finished taking DMT, and we'd both had incredible experiences, and I was telling you that I saw this looked like Socrates or any of the bearded philosophers, kind of like a long beard, a foot long beard and long wavy hair and with a toga, and he's reclining in a cloud, and it looked like Michelangelo had painted him completely out of cloud, and he was real. And the things about DMT beings, as far as I'm concerned, they never look at you. They always have a emotional face. That's to say, they don't have any emotion on the face. They're just looking, which is very fortunate because if they were looking at you, then it would be a whole different ball game. I'm telling you. And if they had wrathful faces and things like this, well, it will be something else. But because these entities, all the entities I've seen, they're never looking at anything in specific. They seem to be just gazing into the abyss. They have a emotional expression on their face, which makes them very, very non-threatening. And so, my version, I made videos and I couldn't stop talking about it, and I can't stop talking about it to this day because it has such a powerful, profound effect on me. And so, how close to my experience was yours? And you went before me.
I was quite surprised that even though I did quite an intense dose, and I mean it was quite a big hit. I thought, I'm in a good place. Prior, just to point this out, prior to the trip, I was palpitating really bad, and the nerves were just immense. As you can imagine, most people who have this type of experience with these powerful psychedelics, you know that it's going to be like, it's almost like a bodily. No matter how much you tell yourself, or at least for me, don't be nervous about doing this. There's always that body response for me, so the anxiety is really tricky. But what I found with my experience is when I first went into it today with such a heavy dose, it was quite terrifying. I thought I was tripping I thought I was going to have a really bad trip.
I thought you were
Um,
going to speak about the first experience we had
the
with.
first experience. Well, it's kind of the same because
But
um,
because I just wanted to clarify, how close do you think your experience was? Because it makes a real big difference. Because if you say that, yes, my experience was pretty well what you said, because we were both pointing to the same cloud, and we said that's where this toga bloke was, and you said
yeah.
it was there. You
Well,
looked away,
that's
and
to me that was like a visual effect. So, like when we see these visual effects, it's like the mind or the brain is looking at these objects. It could be that there's an entity there. It could be that because everything's so open and you've got so much information traveling through the brain that the brain's trying to find patterns in what you're experiencing. So it reverts to things that mean a lot. And because we've got quite a lot in common, it could be that originally I thought it could have been an archetypal thing. Now I'm not too sure if it's archetypal. I think what it essentially is a deeper entity and a deeper intelligence that uses these archetypal symbols in order to communicate with you. And that's like what's happening. So, a lot of people can demean this experience and say, well, all that's happening is the same that Google DeepDream is doing. Your brain's looking for patterns in things. And because you and Aaron are kind of like got similar mindsets about the world, similar ideas, that maybe that's why you saw the same things in the clouds, because the brain went there and decided to try and this pareidolia on steroids, if you will, tried to see the same thing because the clouds were there, you were in the same environment, you're in the same energy, whatever. But I think that there's something deeper than that. I think there's an intelligence there that uses that as a way of communication. Now, talking about the beings not looking at you, I see two types of beings on DMT. On that particular trip, the first type of being was something that is inexplicable because it's kind of like a fractal based energy or an entity in that way. It doesn't have any human form necessarily, sometimes maybe similar human form. It's kind of made of the environment. It's very fractal. It's very autonomous and or whatever. But then you've got the second type of being, which a lot of people I think mistake for just that pareidolia on steroids, if you will. Like you might look at the wall and see smiley faces at you and things. I do get things staring and looking at me. That's the difference, I'd say. You say these beings are kind of not really making contact. For me, I think they can be quite intense. So is that a difference then between our psyche, how we experience. But I don't think that those are the things really that make the DMT trip special. I think what makes DMT trips special is the deeper intelligence that you access, regardless of all the visual effects.
Hmm.
So, yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, what my angle is on this is that when we look at pareidolia, this phenomenon whereby the mind will sort of like create faces in patterns. When I'm on DMT, I'm not seeing anything that looks a little bit like this or looks a little bit like that. And when these faces come, they are not using a lot of material. So, for instance, when I see these beings in the clouds, it can be any random shaped cloud. That this DMT needs some matter to work with. But if you've got a cloud and it's kind of like the shape of my fist and it's the only one in the sky, then that can be big and everything. It will use that matter to convey whatever it wants to convey. Now, the thing is about my history, I've always been very, very steeped in religion and the Bible and looking into Yahweh and Jesus and all that stuff. And of course, I'm very familiar with Greek and Roman philosophers. And so all these togas and this, that, and the other. And so I don't know exactly what's going on there. The DMT gives me something that I comprehend and I'm very familiar with. But when I see these things, there is no shadow of a doubt that they are fully living entities and they are perfect. They're just like any human being. If I'm looking at you now on the screen, I will see them exactly like that. They are living. There's the aura of livingness. Now the thing is about this God thing in the clouds. It never said I'm God. It never gave any inferences or persuasions that it was God. And this is why after I said, well, it could have been misconstrued as God because we've had stories forever about God in the clouds and this that, and the other. And I've read the Bible in enough detail to know that God made manifest from clouds, but never actually seen. He only spoke from a column of a cloud or something like that. But so these could have been any number of archetype, but they were the wise old gentleman type archetype. And when I see these guys, they're full of muscles.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, what you're suggesting then is that these intelligences are not just mere pareidolia or pareidolia. It's not just the fact that maybe the sigma one site of the brain, the receptors are open, and you're receiving so much information that the brain is like supercharged at trying to find patterns in things. See, that's kind of like the main narrative about the open-eyed experience, if you will, is like you look at objects and you might be staring at a blank wall, but the brain's like, well, I'm looking at more than just a blank wall here because everything's open, my receptors are open, so it starts to imagine up and look for patterns that are not there. So that, again, I agree with you, is like I don't think it's as simple as that. I don't think it's as simple as that deep dream. I think there's something else that's maybe even it's kind of like endogenous to DMT, or maybe, because when you do other psychedelics, this thing seems to be more prominent, but with DMT, there's something special about it that's just not that. So you said that you see these things, and these are beings, these are they have their own maybe self set of motivations, and I get the same experience. But there are two types for me. Like there's the thing that we're talking about here, which is what you see with your eyes, essentially, these if on high dose experiences. But for me, the beings that really seem to be quite profound for me are the ones that you experience whether your eyes are open or closed. You're not here anymore. You're kind of in this fractal realm, and you got these autonomous, like the jesters and the elves and the machine elves and all these things that seem to be prevalent in these high dose experiences. Like today's experience, similarly to the first one, I'll just go to the first one. When we were in Portugal and we did it on the beach, there was a time there that before I opened my eyes and saw this stuff, and I do actually specifically remember seeing a seagull, and almost as if it was flying through like some matrixial web of energy that seemed to be unveiled, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then as I was looking at the seagull, there's little clouds, and they would turn into like, the God pointing guy with all of the muscles and things. I saw the same thing. But prior to that, there was an energy and intelligence there that was deeper than even that. It was something that I remember it being red, fractal in nature, a little bit like those Alex Gray paintings. You ever seen the Hall of Mirrors
Yeah.
and things? That kind of experience, and in that realm, that whole space, it was intelligent. It was all the so-called walls and the domes and the archways and everything. You'd get entities appearing on it, and I felt like I was becoming part of the sun for some weird reason. And then coming back from that, open my eyes, and then I start to see all these secondary effects, like the gods in the clouds, and like the strange like unveiling of this web of energy and all these things. And I had a similar experience today. But that's again,
I think, Guy, if you move the microphone just below your bottom
just
of
a
your
little
chin,
bit.
instead of having to do this because you keep forgetting to do that, just keep it under your chin.
How's that?
Yeah, that's better.
A lot better. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, because it keeps.
Yeah, they're not great. These don't buy the Rode Pod mic, guys. They're just not worth it. So yeah, it's the fascinating thing for me is the underlying intelligence that seems to communicate through these visual effects and auditory effects and whatever. There's an emotional component to it. There's but I genuinely do feel that maybe there are some similarities between your trip and my trip and everyone else's, which we can all talk about when we see that that's a common theme with DMTs. People tend to experience similar things, same things. But I think that there's a very deep and personal part of it. And these beings seem to tell you things about yourself that you either forgot or you never knew. Now, there's an argument that they can't tell you anything that you don't already know. I disagree with that. At least on a upper conscious level. I've learned things in a DMT space that I'd never previously considered. But yeah, I think the special thing about it for me is definitely the deeper intelligence that's involved in it. And I do think that is not you. I think that's some other thing that you're a part of. We could go down the rabbit hole of non-duality and everything's the same consciousness and all this kind of stuff. But when we look at it from an experiential level, there is some other, just like when you talk to your mate down the pub and he's a different person to you in this seeming mire of the world that we live in DMT, whatever these beings are seem to be in the same way, just like Dave in the pub, only way more fractal and way more like knowledgeable about things. And I do think that the effects that you experience, like the gods in the clouds, or like, if you look at your hands and you start seeing swirly patterns or whatever, I think that these beings are using those symbols in order to communicate things to you. I think that's what they are doing. It's like they're almost in your mind saying, you look up here and you see something, and then all of a sudden there'll be an epiphany about it, or that's like that for me and a lot of people. So I think that it's a mix mash of, the mind is just like the connections are firing in the brain. So that physiological component, the connections are firing in the brain. Then there's the spiritual and the emotional component to it. And everything's just like pure overwhelm, like death by astonishment, really. But why is it then that throughout all of that and all the people that are talking about it, there's some different views on it, everybody seems to get benefit from it if it's done in the right way. Everybody, there's people talking about being locked out the DMT realm. There's people talking about, being punished for taking the piss with it and stuff like that. That's not you doing that, I don't believe. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that these beings are separate from us in some way, or are they just deeper aspects of our subconscious, maybe archetypal? But then if they were archetypal, why is it that we don't understand a lot of what we're seeing? You might understand it better than your average person, but on average, people don't understand these entities that they're seeing. They don't really make much sense to them. They have this nature about them that's just completely and utterly otherworldly. If that's the case, then it can't be archetypal, can it? Because archetypes are based on things that we understand. It's based on, you could say the God in the cloud is archetypal, But looking at some DMT jester with a completely and utterly unrecognizable physical feature coming up and showing you some object that you just think to yourself, if I could only figure out how to do that, then I'd be a god. That's not archetypal. That's completely and utterly otherworldly. So that's what makes me think these beings are separate, because I don't think it's just you. I think there's, again, this deeper underlying level of intelligence, and then there are these beings that exist within that, and when you go into their realm, I think that they've got some access to your mind, and they're trying to use symbols and things in order to communicate messages to you, and I think that's what's going on.
Well, I think, like all things, everyone's going to have a different perspective, and so out of the must be close on 200 excursions I've had with DMT, I've never seen any of this Alex Gray type stuff. I've never seen any machine elves or any entities with closed eye DMT sessions. When I am looking with closed eyes, it isn't that interesting to me. There's all these patterns and stuff going on which I can't comprehend. And I've actually said to it on a couple of occasions, I said, you got to slow it down. I can't even comprehend what I'm looking at. It's just completely unfathomable geometry. But there was an occasion when they did this. And I remember Joe Rogan speaking about he got the bird on one DMT. And it's kind of like, it's just tongue in cheek, it's just joking, it's just fucking around, and it's very playful. I've always found DMT very playful. And
Yeah, it
then
was today.
when I was doing it a little bit too much, the DMT told me this.
Mm,
It was very,
yeah.
it was matter of fact. It was kind of like, you're taking the piss. You're
Mm.
doing too much.
I had the same thing happen today. It was a feminine female energy entity speaking. I could understand what it was saying. It wasn't auditory, but I could hear the words. I know that sounds
Mm.
strange, but a lot of people who have done DMT will understand that. And I was going to do another hit, and she's like, "Whoa, put the pipe away, don't touch it, and just absorb what you've just experienced first." And then there's this negative one. No, I'll pick it back up again. Come on, come and join us. And I'm saying to this thing, I'm listening to what you're saying, but I'm not doing what you're saying. like, and then I started, thinking about like these, the good and evil side of things. And anyway, that went completely crazy. But the thing with that is, you say you don't see these autonomous entities the way that Terence McKenna describes them, let's say,
No.
right?
And you
For
know what?
me,
I've to many, many people who have never ever seen
yeah,
these.
yeah, and you know what? It's funny, as a guy that that I've been speaking to recently that doesn't experience that either. It's quite a deep and a personal experience for him, but he doesn't get that experience. I do. I'm wondering whether it's got something to do with your mindset, or whether it's because I'm obviously a different mindset to you. I'm a lot more active mentally in certain areas because of the so-called ADHD or whatever. But like, I think that there is a component of personality to it. But yeah, I do see those things, and they're very prominent. I've been in spaces where the whole world around me has just become a fractal digital environment, and within that environment, these beings are in there that seem to be made out of the environment. Now, the thing is, I don't experience that unless I'm in a dark place, a
Mm.
dark lit
You
place.
see, Terence McKenna, he never did any DMT, to my knowledge, with open eyes. It was
No.
always in a very, very dark room, and he was always very serious about it. And I've tried on a couple of occasions in a very dark room, as dark as I can get, but my mind just doesn't seem to lend itself to that. Now, I'm an aphantasiac, which means that under normal circumstances, I don't see any imagery in my mind's eye. If I was to say to you, can you picture a cricket bat in your mind's eye? Can you actually see something?
Yes, that was more prominent when I was younger. I used to, in fact, strangely, this is from a DMT experience. I have a feeling or a vague memory of being able to see what I see on DMT when I was very young, anyway, without psychedelics. And
Right.
I used to lay in bed at night time, and I remember very vividly my mind would open up and I'd see shapes morphing into different things, and then it'd start getting details, it'd start to build, and then I'd end up in these environments where it was very, very vivid, seeing vivid imagery and all these things. Now, I know that I've spoke to many people who've never had that, which is interesting. You know, I've always had that from being very young, and I think that's probably why I ended up becoming an artist. Maybe I don't know, um, but that's just my experience. Now, some people might be more akin to being more emotional, or maybe not necessarily creative on that level. They're a different type of consciousness, or if you will. So for you, you could be experiencing something that a lot of other people could relate to too. You know, it's just different because you might have a different mindset. But the realm itself, again, all those are the kind of like surface level things that can be different. But I think that maybe we can all agree that there is an underlying intelligence, even to everyone's experience, that seems familiar. I don't know. When we start stepping into that area of the intelligence side of it, it's A, we can say it's somehow speaking to you in some way. B, we can say that whatever these beings are seem to be separate, however they manifest. C, I think that if we go into the ins and outs of it, we can agree that whatever you experience is very otherworldly, so it's possibly not archetypal. And you know, there's other similarities we could look at, but yeah, it's interesting. I'd like you to be able to see that. I really would like you to the Alex Gray carnival realm.
Yeah,
It's like a carnival realm.
yes, I'd love to have an excursion into that and to see the Joker and machine elves and all these different sorts of things. But it doesn't matter how much I take. I only ever see pastel shades of geometry, just often scrolling by and nothing too overwhelming and awe inspiring. There's a lot of checkered stuff. There seems to be like a lot of scrolls, maybe even with numbers in there. And I look at it and I don't compute it. I get somewhat frustrated, and I'm compelled to open my eyes. And when I open my eyes, that's when the magic begins,
Yeah,
and I have to run to a window and I look outside, and I'm telling you, the whole world has just, it's had a simulacrum dropped over it, and everything is become cartoon and everything's playful, and it's such a wonderland. It's absolutely beautiful. Every tree is like dancing and like this, and they all look amazing and magic, like in the movie Avatar, something like that. And then in all barks and then all stones and all paving stones and everything, there's all different sorts of creatures that I've never seen in my life, and they're not animated. They're frozen, and the archetypes that I see are like literally baby cherubs, babies with wings, the cherub from the Bible. Then I'll see some bat-headed, bat-winged, fanged, bat winged, sort of things who are flying around. Well, they're static, but they're around these Greek god warriors, and they're lurching through the sky, and the beard's flowing and the hair's flowing. They're going somewhere, they're flying through the cosmos and they're on a mission, and they've got cherubs around them, and then these batwing creatures, but they're not sinister. There's nothing that's sinister about any of it. It's all amazing and it's beautiful.
mm,
I come out of every single one of my DMT trips with a brain flushed with
Okay,
serotonin, because
can I ask
the,
you?
the DMT molecule is almost identical to serotonin, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Can I ask you a question? You know, before you go into these trips, either now or ever, have you ever had that like sort of bodily panic attack, just knowing that you're going to be entering this like crazy realm?
There was for the first 50 times I took DMT, I'd have to build up for it,
Mm,
and I'd get the notion that I'm going to do it. This is when I was down in Portugal, and I'd go, okay, well, I'm going to do it in 2 or 3 days' time. My body would have to get used to it. My mind would have to get used to it, and then it could come a day forward, or it could go a day, further. But I'd know exactly where I'm going to do it, and I'd end up walking several miles to a certain beautiful cove, or under a tree in the wood where I knew I wouldn't get disturbed. But of course, the ego has anxiety. And I'm like, well, look, the anxiety is always there, because the ego is always insecure, because you never know what you're going to get. But after about 50 sojourns, when I was getting pretty well the same thing, then the anxiety became less and less. And now, these days, when I take it, there's a little bit of slight nervousness in the chest,
mm,
but it's kind of like, okay,
mm,
here we go again. Let's
mm,
do it.
yeah,
And I just override it, but it still
yeah.
is there. It's a natural thing, but it's no big deal.
It's like I felt a disconnect. Like I knew in my mind that I would be fine, but my body was just panicking. Like it was so strange, and my heart's like thump, 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 and I'm laid down trying to meditate, and I finally got to a state where I was still quite anxious, but it had lessened a little bit, and I took the first hit, and then after that, man, that first, I mean, it was a big, big one. This is today, I mean, and like there was just this instant, like, just it comes on, and I start feeling this panic, and I could become more aware of my heart beating, and I'm like, okay, that's fine, that's a normal, it's just your body doing its thing, and then as it's coming in, I always hear these weird ringing sounds, like, and like a pressure in the head,
Mm.
and maybe my skin gets all tingly, and then like all of a sudden I'll feel like an immense, like today it was like this immense paranoia, like I'm like, oh my god, what have I done, and then as soon as those thoughts started entering my head, it started to snowball very quickly into very negative thoughts. But then just as quickly as that happened, it was almost like there was a part of me, and a presence and a comfort there. I'm laid against this tree, and I put my hand on this tree, and I'm trying to anchor against this tree to find something that I could hold on to, because this is turning into a bad trip now. And then this presence, this entity, she's like, he just said, you always have to anchor to something. It's always been you. It's all about you. You're just projecting yourself into something else to find the safety that's already there. Stop doing that, because that is the something that is actually inhibiting your entire life.
Because you're still hanging
I
on. The ego's still hanging on.
Exactly, but I'd never, as an ego, I'd never experienced or considered that I were doing that. Like the other day, I did it, and the dogs are on the bed, and I'm like, and then I've done it before, and I've had to hold someone's hand because I've been having a mad experience, like, and I'm
Right.
like, but then when I look at it, and the DMT was telling me, it's not just when I'm tripping that I'm doing that. There's many areas of my life where I'm doing that. So that is still creating separation. And it's the one thing, it's creating separation. It's the one thing that is holding me back from really integrating into a peaceful present state of existence in my life. And it's clearly the ego, and the ego didn't like to hear that. But then all of a sudden it was like, boom, the ego was gone, and I was speaking to myself, but not from me. There was a voice using my body and my mouth, talking about all this stuff. And I'm sat there and I'm going, it's all you. It's always been about you. It's never not you. It's all you. You don't need to anchor to anything. And you're already exactly where you need to be, blah, blah, blah. And all. And it just these reminders. And as this is happening, if I close my eyes, all I could see was like these red fractal fiery patterns, like a vortex opening up in the mind. There was nothing too severe about it, but then this thing was communicating with me, and it was feminine, but there was no like faces, no,
Mm.
female bodies or anything like that. But it was a presence. But I feel like it was a spirit. I genuinely feel like it were a spirit, as you might misunderstand it if you were like a shaman doing it in the jungle or whatever. But there was this deeper intelligence, this spirit that was actually communicating through me to myself and through the experience. And this is something that I've never experienced like in that way before on DMT. I think, and then from that point, I'm looking around and I'm looking at the clouds, and they are morphing into all different things. Not the godlike bodies today; it was more UFOs and stuff. Strangely, and then I'm looking at the grass, looking at my hands, and everything's like glistening, and your hands, you can see all the lines in your hands. Everything's like really, and I'll
Yeah.
notice that my hands almost look like you get all these blotch. It's like a blotchiness. Everything
Yeah,
looks
blotchy
really,
and look old looking.
yeah, like really like loads of contrast in it. Like
Mm.
it's like somebody's increased the contrast in the whole reality around you.
Yeah.
And then and then from there, it's like all of a sudden, all these palpitations, everything just calmed down, and then the world just goes, "Woof, hello, we're here." It's like, so yeah, that was an immense experience. And then I hit the pipe again, and I was like, oh, and then it just started going crazy from there. So, but
Okay,
but
well,
but
let's let me address that part before we go on to the second part. As soon as I start supping on the pipe, the ego's gone, and as soon as I get the hit and I enter into the DMT world, there is no me. There's just DMT, and that's it. So there's nothing to be panicked about. The ego's not there. And so, what I think might be happening, if you are not taking as much as you think you are, and you're not blasting the ego aside, the ego's still hanging on. The ego's panicking because you've not gone full in, because you've
yeah,
anchored.
absolutely,
I think you might be anchoring, Guy, and I think you might be teetotaling a little bit. To be fair, because look, I remember when we were down on Portugal, and you went first, and you took an inhalation, and then you went full tank, and that was it, right? Your inhalation was like full, whereas my inhalation's like this. Till my eyes burst out, my
yeah.
throat, and then like that time I did about 80 milligrams, right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah, yeah.
straight in there. I'm not messing around, and
I
it
weren't messing
comes
around today.
right. Well, it comes out my ears, and then within a couple of seconds, I go into this absolute
Mm,
peace, the stillness, the tranquility, and
mm,
when you're open-eyed and you're on the beach, you can see people, but they're
mm,
they're, they're just like shadows. It's kind of like you see them moving, but it's kind of like it's some sort of animation. They're not real human beings,
mm.
because everything is turned into cartoon. Everything
Yeah,
man-made is absolutely perfect. It's like Lego, and everything that's natural has things living in it. Whether it's the
mm,
clouds, the cliff, the beach, the grass, and all the flowers, they're all very, very happy and dancing, and
yeah.
so
I
uh,
think I think for me it was like a purge. Like I could feel my ego being purged. Like I say I could feel my ego being purged, but you get just for semantics' sake, there was a purging of it. Like, and the first hit, that was the first hit, and I probably did today leave a little bit of a gap between that and the second hit. But then after the second hit, I just went and hit the whole thing like three big hits and then boom. But but yeah, that purge part of it, you are right in what you're saying, because my mindset earlier was I'll do one hit, see where it takes me. Sorry, I do one hit, see where it takes me, and then I'll go back in and I'll do my proper big hits. And I
yeah, but
tried that
yeah,
today.
Guy, you know that you've got to do at least two hits to get
Mm,
there. So if you're
mm,
only taking one to see where it gets you, well, you're not gonna be where you
mm.
want to be. So you just got to keep blasting it until you can't physically
Yeah,
take
yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, so just to put it into perspective, then, you know the little vape pen that we've got.
Yeah.
So I half filled the tank on that. My first
Right.
hit was probably a 5-second inhalation, and it started to burn, and I couldn't take any more. And I held it in for 15 seconds. That was my first hit on that. And then after that, it was like it was just it's very
Yeah.
intense.
To get the intensity of the.
But that felt like I was being purged. And then there was something that were telling me to do the other hits. They always, every time for me, do you ever get that? I get something like telling me, maybe it's me, I don't know, maybe it's some entity or whatever
Yeah.
is saying, go further. So then I do that. And then it's after that second one, I found that then things settled down. Now I have thought to myself, I wonder if what's happening is that first hit's quite intense. I mean, I think I could have broke through just from that, but I didn't quite get there. But am I leaving it too long between that first hit and the second one for the tolerance to build? Because to be honest, if I'd have done them back to back, it would have been even more intense. But at the same time, still very intense, still no less. I did definitely break through. There's no mistake in that.
Yeah. There's no mistaking.
But I think if I'd have done it probably closer together, I'd have been definitely like the time I did it in flat. That was insane. To be fair, I don't think I had any benefit from that experience because I was just gone.
So what I used to do is I used to try to go bullet to gate and just do one massive inhalation, and I can do that, and invariably I just blast through with doing that. But what I've started to do in recent times is take, say, like a smaller one, which would be the bit that you take after the big hit to ensure that you actually go through. So I do it differently. I do the smaller one first. So I'll go, and then you feel all the stuff going on, and the bottle's gone a different color, and this, that, and the other. And then I'll hit it again, and then I'm full on, really, absolutely everything. And then
I'll be honest, mate. Have you tried the vape pen yet?
No.
You only need one hit with that, mate.
Yeah,
It is
yeah,
insane. Like it is, it's nothing like I've had with this. Like it because it's a quartz coil in there.
yeah.
It just hammers it straight away. It's insane. You should try that. But yeah, sorry, carry on, mate. I didn't mean to cut you off then. So you do yours kind of like a smaller one
Smaller
first,
one
and then
to
go
begin,
into
and then
right.
the absolute maximum of the lungs. Because if
Mm.
you do absolute maximum of the lungs and you don't quite get enough, then it's difficult to take the smaller one after. But you can do the smaller one because your head's not gone initially, and so you can feel all the stuff coming on, but you're still compos mentis because you haven't broke through. You
Right.
see?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've got to do it in quick succession. So as soon as you've done
Mm.
that one, you exhale, and then you straight back into it again.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna try that with the thing next time. But yeah. Anyway, coming back to experience though, definitely felt. And you know what? I think one of the most beneficial things about this is afterwards you just feel so like everything's been purged out. I obviously have quite a lot of. I'm quite busy. I've got a business to run. I've got family. I've got all this stuff. So that all gets stored in the body and in the mind, but mostly in the body. And I feel like when I have these experiences, it just pushes it out. But that's that initial resistance. Does that make sense? Like all of that tension and everything that I've built up in my day-to-day life, on that first one, that's when I'm panicking and the heart's going and then the mind starts to feel like you're going in a bad trip. And then it feels like it's being sucked out, but I'm in resistance to letting it go. Does that make sense? There's something and that is, to me, it's like an ego death. It's like after that point, like you've said, you're not really there anymore. It won't really be speaking. And then things piece back together after it bells out towards the end of the experience. But yeah, I was sat in meditation. I was laid on a tree for my first hit. I managed to sit up, did my other few hits while I was sat with my legs crossed in meditation. It was insane. I do plan on going back up there and going a little bit deeper, actually, but I might film the next one. Put it on like the...
But where did you go?
So, where I live, There
No, no,
is.
no. What I'm talking about, guys, is what I
Oh,
can't.
where did I go?
Yeah, because look, every time I hit the pipe, I go somewhere, and I can tell you exactly where I went because I'm standing up, I'm looking at everything. When I do it in the churchyard, the church looks like it's kind of Lego. Anything man-made, it's Lego. The clouds, they're all doing something. Maybe there's
Mm,
all the colours of the rainbow in the clouds. Sometimes it looks like jigsaw puzzles when they're all actually like pieces up there,
mm.
and all the trees are joyous and everything. And when I look down at the
Well,
flowers,
usually, I will go to some fractal realm, and there's no awareness of my body
but
for
do you
a
have your
period of
eyes
time.
open or closed?
But that only ever happens if I'm in a room and I'm doing that at night time.
Right. So
If
what?
I'm out in daytime and I do the same dose, if not more, I don't seem to go anywhere. I mean, it almost is. It's not that I'm going anywhere. What's happening is like everything's coming to me in the world that I'm already in, and I'm seeing more of everything that already is. But yet, if I was to sit here right now and do an experience now, because I'm in a room, my imagination seems to, it's not even imagination, but I seem to go somewhere into some trippy fractal realm. But when I'm in nature, it's almost as if it's more emotional, it's more interpersonal, and whatever this intelligence is feels the need not to take me into these crazy realms and feels the need to reconnect me with something that I'm very deeply and intrinsically, that I'm in love with, because I'm in love with nature. And so it brings nature and it brings the connection to the earth and all this kind of stuff to me. And that's why I prefer to go out into nature and do it, because I find that those are the most beneficial trips. If I wanted the spacey experience, I'll go downstairs in the living room, close my eyes and lay back on the sofa. Very
Yeah.
different experience. So setting is really important, but not just, it's more important than people give it credit for, I think, because I've had upwards of, I can't even count the amount of experiences I've had with DMT and other psychedelics too. But what I've noticed with DMT is like the big hits when you're indoors and you're in a room and you're on a sofa, you go somewhere or the room turns into some environment that's otherworldly or whatever. Today, I didn't get all those effects, but I felt all of the intensity of the experience, regardless. The whole scenery around me just became super HD. Like it was beyond and then everything had like faces and it was smiling at me. And then you'd look at like a little piece of wheatgrass and you could see little crystals coming off it and like it's like flaming up. And then I look at my hands and there's like energy lines running through my hands and I'd start looking. I'd be like, sometimes I'll get like an aura around the edge of my hands that's really intense, and I can see that, and everything. It feels like it becomes more like a dome, like I'm in some kind of simulated dome. I experienced that, and then you'll see faint in the clouds, in the bright sky, faint overlays, like little rays of light running through, almost like little lines of code just running through everything. And
Right.
then, I'll close my eyes, and then in my peripheral vision, when my eyes are closed, I'm sat there. It's almost like you could feel this, like a wormhole of fractals opening up inside your mind. And then there's this energy and this intelligence there to it all, and it's speaking to you. And it's using a female voice, which you can't hear audibly, but you can hear it in your mind.
Mhm.
And for some reason, it's not just something that you're imagining up. They're actually speaking to you. You can't preconceive what they're going to say. So I find that very, very fascinating. So it's very different when I'm out in nature. If I went up there tonight and there was no, and I think the sunlight has a lot to do with how it changes your
Oh,
experience.
absolutely, absolutely, mate.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I wouldn't consider. Well, I said I wouldn't consider, but I have done it at night, trying to see what the moon and the stars look like. Wasn't that impressive? Uh,
I did Changa at night, and I did the same thing. I did quite a heavy dose on a on a I can't say it can on a big something that I was able to begins with a
y-
B, ends in ong,
yeah,
and I got it. I got that, and I was unable to walk. I remember walking into the kitchen. I seen a plant. Put my head in the plant, and when I had my eyes closed, I could still see the plant, but it was made of energy. And then I go
right.
outside, and the stars. I couldn't. My brain forgot how to perceive distance, so the stars just felt like they were. You could pluck them out
Right.
of the sky.
Mm.
It was so cool. And then the grass and things outside seemed to have like a force field of energy around it. And while I was absolutely tripping my head off on this changa. I tried to take a pee in the garden because I was like busting, and and it's like these plants were like, "Hey, go and get a watering can," instead, like being really playful and like telling me off for doing that. Like, so
Right.
yeah, it is interesting at night. Anyway,
Have you ever had a samadhi?
I have never had a samadhi, no, but samadhi potentially has been there, but no, there was no ego, there's no me there experiencing it.
Right. Okay.
But I mean,
So
like where the mind just completely goes blank, it's just
yeah.
pure consciousness.
Well, when
Yeah,
the ego goes offline and
yeah,
you're just looking at the world without the ego.
yeah. Well, I guess it's the semantic argument, and I can't say I've had a samadhi because then that would not be true because it's the absence of me, which is samadhi
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah. So,
But yeah, I know what you're saying.
okay. So, well, on this particular occasion, I had this particular one, and I've had like two decent ones and then a sort of a semi one, but this one was really really powerful. I'd just been cycling. It was a summer's day, and I'm always looking at the trees, and I want to know what every tree on my journey is because I'm just interested in all these variety of trees now. So I saw one that I didn't recognise the leaves, and it was just as I was entering the village, and so I put the bike on the curb, and I went to have a look at these leaves, and I'm like, oh, okay, very interesting. I remember what they look like, and I'll look in my book when I get back. And then when I turned around to go towards my bike, the ego just fell away, and I looked at the clouds, and the sound of it just went away, and it's very DMT. This is why I'm saying this, because the samadhi is almost identical to my DMT trips. If I take DMT and I'm looking at the world just goes quiet, and the ego just goes off, and then I'm looking at the world and everything, and it's so beautiful. It feels so perfect, and it's so loving, and it's kind of like, this is for you, this is for you. And I'm like, wow, it's so beautiful, thank you very much, it's amazing, I'm super grateful. And so this samadhi lasted, I don't know, about 30 seconds. And so then when I came out of that, I realized that that's very very similar to the DMT. Now, just before I continue, just going to pause because I just got to go to the toilet, mate, and I'm back in a minute. Yeah,
You're all right, mate. No, I
I'll
can
just
always
click
cut
back
that in
on
if
then.
need be.
Okay, so I'm back now. So yeah, what were you saying then to your viewers?
So what I was saying to the viewers was basically it's interesting when these samadhi experiences happen because the ego is not there, the I am's not there, and then after the only way to describe that is the ego tries to latch onto that experience and takes credit for something that never concerned it.
I don't know whether that happened with me. What happened was such a profound vision and feeling that it was very very spirit oriented. It was the spirit that experienced that. The ego never experienced it.
Would that be Satori or something? Is it Satori? I don't know. What's Satori mean? No, I always forget.
Oh, the
Bloody
satori, that one is sort of like a negative thing, isn't it? Let me just Google that.
Oh yeah, let's have a look. Satori.
A sudden moment of awakening, enlightenment, or comprehension.
Oh
Uh,
right, so it's pretty much the same as samadhi then, I guess. Is it? Or am I
well,
getting terms mixed up here? I'm confused.
well, okay. So I'm going to see what the samadhi is.
It might be the same thing, different cultures, possibly.
So samadhi is the ultimate meditative state in Hinduism and Buddhism, representing complete mental absorption and enlightenment. In this profound state, the distinction between the observer, the process of observing, and the object itself vanishes, resulting in a deep, unified experience of pure consciousness and spiritual
So
bliss.
is that non-duality then?
Yeah, because you just got the consciousness, and so
Right.
the world is conscious, and you're experiencing the world being conscious. It
So
actually
so
feels.
so so what you're saying is that the I is there, but the knowing of the expanded state of samadhi becomes known. It becomes recognized by the I as like, because for me, samadhi means like ego death. And if ego death is a thing, then that means there's no I there to experience any samadhi. Samadhi is the absence of experience.
Well, just let me read
So
the
are we saying
Just let me read the samadhi again then. Samadhi is the ultimate meditative state in Hinduism and Buddhism, representing complete mental absorption and enlightenment. Now, mental absorption and enlightenment, I don't know what that means exactly, the absorption. In this profound state, the distinction between the observer, the process of observing, and the object itself vanishes. So the observer vanishes, maybe, resulting in the deep, unified experience of pure consciousness and spiritual bliss. So
it's
um,
awareness beyond everything? Yeah.
the thing is with all these things, we can get so many different levels of
It,
interpretation from
it,
all
it,
different sorts of strains of Buddhism.
you
And
just can't, but you can't describe it because it's a semantic thing. It's like why Jiddu Krishnamurti referred to himself as the speaker, because
yeah,
once you're there, how it's bigger than I. It's bigger than that. But I gets to go along for the ride, I think, with DMT, which is interesting. So I understand what you're saying completely. There can be these states of pure consciousness, but somehow there's something that's holding the false self, taking that for a ride, because I think that this idea of the false self, what's the old saying? Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. You're never not going to have an ego. It's always there. It's part of experience. But that can be something that you believe is separate from everything else, or it can be known to be just something that's appearing within the vast awareness of everything. So, if that's the case, then DMT is strange like that. It's kind of like the ego goes for a ride rather than being in the driver's seat. I think that's kind of like the way I experience it. Um, but yeah, it's almost like you look at the sense of self, the I, as being so insignificant and stupid that you can just play and have fun with it. And the entities in the DMT realm, for me, that's what they do. They take the piss. You get the finger. You get like. Don't take life so seriously, because it's not really a you. You are not really the whole picture. You are just a fragment of it. I think that's kind of like, would that be some? Yeah, it would be, I guess. It's the ego death, isn't it? You
well,
kind of.
mm, so let me just have another go at explaining. So what I saw on this particular day, the whole world seemed to stand still, only it was still moving. And I was observant of the clouds moving very, very slowly in the sky. There was a feeling of being loved. There was a feeling that the whole world was for me. And it was very nurturing. It was very motherly. And everything just felt completely blissful, wonderful, and perfect. There was no judgment, there was no labels because the ego had been set aside. There was something conscious observing and receiving the information and the feelings. Now, going back to my DMT experiences, it's pretty well almost identical. And so, what I can also tell you is when I have an open eye meditation, when I'm pretty well in a reasonable trance state of an open eye meditation, when I've not been thinking, purposely not been thinking, I'm having a walk in meditation, when I meld into one. And I can do this very easily, ever increasingly. And I made a video today when I'm out in the natural environment, and I say, look, um, as soon as I stop talking, I meld in with the natural world. There is no me per se. I feel the wind, or the wind is being felt, the sun is being felt. I'm watching the swaying of all of the bushes, the leaves, and the grasses, and all that. There's a heightened state of observance, but there is no labeling. There's no judgment, and there's no, oh, this is this and that's that. No, there's just a beautiful oneness of the observation, and so that can come about with this open-eyed meditation, with a samadhi, and with a DMT experience. So that state, I'm experiencing
Well,
that.
do you know what that sounds like to me? The way that you've described it, it sounds like samadhi. Because you say you're still able to be there to recognize the experience, but you are the experienced. There's an observer that experiences even like this beyond
Yeah,
you, like, yeah,
it's kind of like the all-seeing eye. That's what it is.
yeah.
And so the ego disappears, and then the all-seeing eye is there. Now, here's another instantiation of what I'm saying. When I was doing my famous spliff smoking, I smoked this spliff in Bradgate Park, first time in 20 years. Yeah. Well, when I was walking, stumbling around and almost just couldn't keep my eyes open, what happened was that the ego completely disappeared, and then there was something aware of my eyes looking at the world.
That,
And
yeah,
have you
yeah,
had that?
that's, yeah. Well, that's a large part of my life is emerging back into that which all experience arises from. Yeah, there's, like I always say, right? Okay, when we look at this, if my mind is like a TV program, like it, just try and equate it that way for like a metaphor. The screen of that program then is what?
The screen of
What's
the
the
program.
what is the substrata of all thought? All thoughts come from one fundamental thought, which is this, the I am. Yeah, we know that. If anybody's into spiritual understanding, there is an I thought that all other thoughts arise from. Yeah, I am here, I am I am up, I am left, I am, whatever. Right? There's an I thought always.
Or could it just be that thoughts are being thought
Well, yeah.
without the originator?
So what I'm saying is, most, maybe not for you, but for most people, if you ask them, right, there is a fundamental I thought. Every thought that we have is based around the I thought. Oh, I'm cold, or oh, I need to do this, or I need to do that, and so on and so on. But this is a sense of me, I, right?
Yeah.
But if you just lock onto the original thought, the I thought, the
Yeah.
me, is that thought aware of itself?
Well, I think you're referring to the ego there, because that's not what I experience. What I experience
No,
is there is sunshine, there is wind, there is rain, and all these
yeah,
difficult
yeah,
things.
exactly. So I'm explaining this to the viewer, obviously, because I've known you so long that this is obviously something that you experience. But what I'm trying to say is, like, whenever a thought appears in the mind, the question is that thought aware of itself? And the answer is no, it's not aware of itself. And whenever you try to look for the thing that is looking at the thought or the observer, you just create new thoughts. So you can never quite track it down. You can never quite find the observer. So when the mind is completely and utterly still through meditation, the observer is it's awareness, it's everywhere. So the I, then, the samadhi, is simply the absence of the I thought long enough for the recognition that there's something larger than you are that's making manifest to you. And then
Right.
the ego goes, oh, I recognize that. I recognize that there's
Yeah.
something bigger than me.
I.
And then what happens is your fear of death starts to go away. You start to look at life completely. You start waking up. And we've been through all this in previous podcasts, but what I'm saying is some people kind of make these big songs and dances around these enlightening experiences that people have. Everybody at some point in their life, I believe, has experienced or non-experienced some form of enlightenment, right? But it's you know, why is it you've got no memories between age 1 and 3 on average?
Mm.
Because at one point at 3 year old, you looked into the mirror and went, "Ah, that's me. I am." And then you started to collect experiences to build your sense of self. And I experienced this and I did it and I. But the 1 to 3 year old was already in samadhi, already enlightened until we taught it not to be, until the brain developed a sense of self and you know. So the thing with DMT, and this is interesting, you know, with Jesus in the Bible, you know, if you want to return to the kingdom of heaven, you must become a child again, or whatever he says. You've got to be a child again, and that's why, because children are already in that samadhi. They don't have an I am anymore. It's just experience. It's just things are just being experienced by this deeper observer,
Yeah.
and then it becomes the ego, and
Yeah,
then that
and that
develops.
then is samadhi. It's deep
Yeah,
meditation. It's a life without the ego, which
yeah.
is always projecting onto everything and spoiling everything.
Exactly. And DMT reminds you that the thing that's spoiling everything is not really who you are, and gives you brief little windows into that innocence of being a child again, the samadhi or whatever you want to call it. And then what happens is the ego goes, "Oh, that was really nice. I experienced something." But I argue that you're only going on for long for the ride. But we, you know, for me, if these non-dual states of awareness are there in my life, and I go, "Oh, I felt at peace. I felt enlightened. I felt a samadhi." I try to catch that in the act, because there is a catching of that in the act,
Mm.
because I don't want to take credit for something because I don't exist in the way that I believe I do. I'm just the ego. I'm just being taken along for the ride, because, you know, how do I know that God's not dreaming up Guy and dreaming up Aaron and, you know, the mind of God and all, you know, and that's, but that doesn't demean who you are. It doesn't demean the ego. The ego is a necessary thing. Yeah, you know, it's just not really the depth of your experience. It's not the depth of who you are. So when we catch our egos trying to take, and this is why I see a lot of narcissism in the New Age movement, the ego comes back online and tries to take credit for experiences, and then tries to inflate itself. And, oh, look at me, I am spiritual because I experienced something, even though I technically wasn't there because it was samadhi, and
Hmm.
I was quiet enough for samadhi to be prevalent in that experience, in that, you know. So yeah, so with DMT, and like coming back to what you were saying, I think it kills the ego long enough for that to become known, and then all of a sudden it's peace, and then the peace is felt even through the ego then at that point, because once the ego goes, well, you know, no, it's really that fucking serious, is it? I'm just passionately participating in the play. That's your favorite saying, you know.
Yeah.
Then things just settle and everything's nice, and I think that's the healing side of it. That's the where the medicinal aspect of psychedelics come from, is when it pushes the mind to the point where it just, even just for a split second, it just calms it gets put back in its place, basically. And I think
Yeah,
that's
it just chills it out. But we know that when we have a decent mushroom trip and the ego gets a good talking to, the ego is solemn and pacified and contemplative and desirous to make changes for a few days until the ego gets back full in swing. And then we pretty well forget about all these, lessons we learn. I was listening to Graham Hancock the other day, and he was saying that he had about 200 ayahuasca experiences. Uh, and he said, when you go into these ayahuasca, they're very powerful. And okay, 200, maybe 80. 80, I've heard him say different figures at different times. But look, when people have told me they have had like 50 ayahuasca experiences, well, if you don't get what those experiences are about in the first 5 or 10, then subsequent occasions I think are pretty futile. Now, Graham Hancock went to the ayahuasca ceremonies. So you're doing it for 6 or 8 hours, and it's a big deal because you got to go to these places, you got to do all that traveling and everything like that. Unless he knew particular retreats, which there are some these days. But if you need that amount of reminding of what an idiot your ego is, I don't know. I think you're beyond any sort of redeeming,
Yeah,
because
you're using it as an attachment, and you're not actually integrating what you should have learned
yeah,
on your
because
first
look, I mean,
experiences. Yeah.
I still remember the very first time that I was having a decent shroom experience, and it was telling me that you don't spend enough time with your daughter. And I was like, well, I can't spend enough time with my daughter because my daughter, her mum, is married to another man, and she lives in another country. you know, and so why are you traumatizing me for that? And even if I was back in the country, I'd only see her kind of like once a week or twice a week maximum, a little bit here and there. And anyway, she's 14, 15, 16. That's a very iffy age for the relationship for the father and daughter. It's the mother's territory. It's to do with all that different sorts of stuff that's going on with the emotions.
Mm.
And uh, but I knew that after the first one, and then
Maybe that's the point of what it was trying to tell you, though. Not to beat yourself up. Maybe you were the one that felt you didn't spend enough time, but it could have been the flip side, that the psychedelic experience was like, well, these are the reasons, and maybe don't beat yourself up about that.
well, I mean, if that was the
It's
case,
just a,
then I don't know why it always was insistent on reminding me, because it'd get to the point whereby after about the fifth time, the 10th time, I'd like, look, this is getting old now. I know all this stuff, and there's nothing I could have done about it. It's over now, and so now I am back living in the country, and I see her as much as is practicable. And
mm,
so, for goodness sakes, just let it lie now. And
mm.
so in my book, I go into considerable depth asking who these agencies are, Guy, because, on the one hand, it's kind of like, is it the high self giving us all these talking to, or is it the Freudian unconscious? Is it a facet of the ego feeling guilty? So is it the guilt? Is it the shame? What exactly is going on? And so when we start to narrow down and hone in on all these different characters, of course, it's very, very difficult to discern who is playing what part. But we know that there is an essence going on.
Mm.
And as long as we get the message, it doesn't matter
It's an
where it
alien
comes.
intelligence, man. It's got to be
No, I don't
alien
think
in the way.
I don't think it is, mate.
You reckon?
No, because in my book, when I'm speaking about this, I'm saying, look, people they always conveying it's the mushrooms telling you this and the mushrooms telling you that, and I'm like, look, am I supposed to believe that there's this alien fungi that has got my whole life mapped out and it knows every single thing about me? Or, Guy, is it much more reasonable that the mushrooms enable the unconscious to come a little bit forward, and the unconscious sends a few bits of information that it's been stewing a long time, and then your consciousness is aware of it? That's much
Mm.
more. It's like when we enter dreams. When we enter dreams, we get privy to the unconscious. It's the only
Well, I
time.
think dreams are an alien intelligence, not alien as in like off-world interdimensional intelligence. That's not what I mean by alien. I mean alien as in like it's something that we don't really know yet. It's an intelligence that exists deeper within the levels of mind that we access because the mind's open into something that's beyond this normal, sense reality that we're in. So in that way, it's an alien intelligence. I think maybe I probably should have demonstrated that. But but I do think that the intelligence that you communicate on DMT isn't necessarily all just coming from you. I did for much of my time, but I've changed my opinions on that because
Well,
of
yes,
looking into
that is
archetypal
different.
stuff.
I concur with that because there's nothing. I don't ever, you know. I think that this one, when it told me this, I'm doing too much DMT. That was the only time I had a personal level of communication like that, and so. Oh no, sorry. The first time, the very first time when I went down to do the DMT in Spain, with a viewer a long time ago. I broke through into a pure white expanse, and it was absolutely brilliant white. And standing there in all this whiteness was a Y, a spongy Y, and it appeared, even
I
though
remember you say, yeah, yeah. Go
yeah,
on,
even
carry
though there's nothing to relate the size to, it appeared to be about 10 feet tall, and it appeared to be about this round, and it was a doughy kind of a Y, and within the Y, there were super bright M&Ms with numbers in them. So there was like the red, the green, the blue, the yellow, and these were going all the way up it and over the two arms of the Y, and different numbers, and so I had no
chromosome.
idea what that was until about 2 days later when it dawned on me. I just kind of like woke up from semi-sleep, and I'm like, it was the Y chromosome. And so I went online to see what the Y chromosome looks like, and it looks like these pieces of dough. And I'm like, wow, isn't that incredible? But the numbers in it, of course, the numbers were metaphorical, to indicate that it was the Y chromosome. So it told me that that's what you are. You are the Y chromosome.
That's interesting. You know, oh, well, we could springboard into loads of conversations about chromosomes, but why are you seeing this? Why a chromosome? What is it that's communicating that? Is it something
Yeah,
that's
what
part
was it that's communicating? And what it says was, it told me that you are it. You have always been it. There's never been anything else
and
but
that's
you.
what I got today.
Right.
Like the
Yeah.
same message,
Yeah.
you
You
know.
are it. There's nothing else going on. So you don't have to be
Oh,
concerned about anything else. It's all you. And it
mm,
felt very maternal. It felt very motherly. And when the DMT started to wear off and I felt myself coming back, I thrust out my arms when I was lying on the couch down in Dom's house. I thrust out my arms. My eyes were closed, and I was like a baby wanting to be picked up by mother. And then I felt myself coming back, 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 back. And when I came back, I was really quite disappointed because I wanted to
mm,
stay there forever because it was absolutely blissful and perfect.
that's mad. Oh, snorted. Sorry.
But what is it that tells us this stuff? That's the thing, and it does feel alien, whereas
And
the one doesn't feel
yeah,
alien.
but there's one experience that kind of like might tie into this in some way, because when I came to Portugal to do that experience on the beach, I fell asleep that night and I had very vivid dreams of you standing over my face while I was asleep, pulling like really crazy faces. And I never said anything, really. I thought, yeah, whatever. But it was very vivid. I think I remember catching because I was on Ryanair. I think I might have got a cold or something. Not that you can catch a cold, but that's a different conversation. But I had some. I must have been detoxing or whatever. Anyway, and we went and did the experience. I think it was a day or two later, and I'd done my one, and then you'd done your one, and you hit it like a champ. And all of a sudden, you were running around making the exact same faces, looking in the exact same way. And at that point, I was like, "Whoa! Like, what is going on here?" So we can talk about all of the interpersonal things, but how the hell? And I know you guys that are watching might find this a little bit of a struggle to believe, but when you look at all of the cases with things like near death experiences and how consciousness can view things non-locally, I think all points in time are connected, and there's something that wanted to tell me that there's a lot more to these experiences than what meets the eye. How did my mind in a dream see the same thing that I saw in this experience? Now, a lot of people might say, oh, it's a coincidence. Maybe so. A lot of people might say that maybe the psychedelic kind of opened Aaron's mind up, and he was able on some level to reenact things that were in my, or I'd experienced through my, consciousness or whatever. That's a possibility, maybe. But to me, it just felt like too specific, too crazy for it not to be something that's related to, I don't know, it seems all like time breaks down with these things,
Yeah. So why did that
It's,
happen a day or two before, and you felt very, very powerfully that they were the exact same faces? And I was going like,
it
kind of like,
was it was exactly the same. I
mm,
saw it vividly in a dream, right? It was pretty nuts, exactly the same. Also, why is it that we both had an astral projection, which we made a video of? So, I don't know if you've still got that one on your channel or anything, but it was a long time ago. But we made a video where we'd seen the same girl. And for moderation's sake, I won't say what we were doing to that girl.
Martella.
Yeah, yeah. I never got the name, but the exact same environment, right? It was the
Mm.
exact same thing. And
It,
when he
this
put the
was an
video
astral
out,
projection for me. It wasn't a dream.
yeah, that's same for me. This is what I mean.
Right.
I don't project anymore. I just can't seem
No,
to
I can't.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I've been locked out. I just can't
Yeah.
seem to do it.
Yeah.
But I get like sometimes I get the vibrations and like I'll get like I'll go, oh, is it tonight going to be the night? And then it just kind of
Right. I don't even come close anymore. I got locked out,
yeah.
without a doubt.
Well,
And every
I
time I
I think I got locked out when I kicked off during an astral projection because I was told I weren't allowed to go any further, and I got thrown back into my body, and I got angry and came back out again, and then this entity was like, "Suit yourself. I did warn you, and I've not been able to do it properly since."
right.
Anyway, not to go too far out at deep end there, but why is it that these things happen? And there's been so many of these synchronistic things, and even more than synchronistic. That's premonition. That's felt like a premonition. Like a lot of people have these types of experiences. The Martella thing with the astral projection, being in the same location, environment, seeing the same things, different angles. You noticed fridge magnets. I didn't see them. I saw fridge magnets on a fridge, but I didn't see that they were Beatles magnets.
Right.
I saw the room downstairs with no carpets and the mattress on the floor where she was laid in the bed.
Yeah.
Right, same thing. Long black hair, but she didn't give me a name. So why are these things happening?
Another one of my viewers said that he'd met Martella.
No way.
Yeah.
I think she needs to
So
calm down a
when we're
bit.
talking about archetypes, then or not, maybe not archetypes, but astral beings, being an actual thing, and they are there, and they will. They'll have a relationship with many humans, because when what happens is with these astral beings, very often you don't even have to leave your body to go into the astral. As soon as you've got the vibration, they'll come to you.
Yeah,
They're on you.
I think she's a succubus, mate.
Yeah, but I don't think that they're succubus, because these things have come to have sex with me on loads of occasions, and I've never been drained. I've never actually had full sex with them. There's been lots of foreplay and that, but it's never
I I
ended up.
I woke up. I woke up, having a full blown
Right.
nice time. Let's say that way. On that occasion, it's when I was waking up, it was happening like a dream, a wet dream,
Yeah.
with that attached, and I was blown away. And then I watched your video, and I was like, no way. So there's that. I can't explain these things, And then another thing I can't explain was when I did the Atlantis truffles, and this one will probably blow your viewers' minds just a little bit. This was about 6, 7, probably 6, 7. Oh God, I'm sick of hearing that. It's a thing that kids keep saying, but this was quite some years ago, and I did the Atlantis truffles, and I remember I was tripping really hard because I did a dose that I probably shouldn't have done, and I was in the mirror, and the first thing I saw a reptile staring back at me in the mirror, and it was like really super realistic, and it's going and all this weird things going on. And then all of a sudden, the reptile changed into me as an old man, and I'm speaking to myself as an old man in the mirror, right? And he's going, "Oh, you've lived a good life, you've done your best," and all this. Anyway, I'm not going to the message of it, but it was a very, very profound experience, and I felt like I got quite a lot of closure from actually talking to myself as an old man. I remember looking in the background in the mirror and seeing the reflection of what looked like Chesterfield sofas and lovely wood grain and all of the nice, like, aesthetic features and things. And that was 7 or 8, no, might be 7 years ago now. And I've never stopped thinking about that. I built my studio based on that very aesthetic in that mirror. The mirror in my studio is the one that just came to me through some synchronistic thing because I knew I was going to find that very mirror.
Right.
Right? I believe that when I'm an old guy and I got white hair, for some reason I'm going to have a red smoking jacket, right? And I'm going to be tripping and I'm going to have the other end of that conversation. And I tell you what, I'm so 100% adamant that that's going to happen based on that experience being so profound. It doesn't matter what happens in my life because I know at least I'm going to get to that point. And that's been like that for 6 years. Explain that.
Yeah.
And we got a video where I spoke about this before, and that was a long time ago. So, it's a profound experience. And, I don't think we can explain it. We can try and explain it away with archetypes, and it's just hallucinations, or it's just your brain being opened up and seeing more than what it, processing more than what it can, or new connections being made in the brain. But when we look at what the brain actually is, there is no evidence that consciousness is produced in there. There's no evidence that the brain thinks the thoughts. There's all the evidence in the world that the brain is a product of consciousness rather than producing consciousness. And if that's the case, then when we start hacking things that are going on in it, you're going to experience weird phenomena that seems external to your experience.
Well, with all of these supernatural experiences I've had entering into different dimensions and things like that, and entities, I don't have any doubt that there's all different sorts of frequencies with beings in them. And when quantum physics talk to us about many worlds, I don't have a doubt about the many worlds. And I'm convinced that when we dream, we go into these other worlds. Because in my book, one day, you've got it in your house, so you'll read it.
I pick it up every now and again, I do.
And so I'm speaking about what's actually going on in dreams, and I go and see my old man. Now I know I go and see him. I go into his world, and in his world, I enter into the body of me, who is living with him and having a relationship with him. And we're doing all the things that we always used to do. He's messing around with cars and buildings because that's what he did, and I used to help him doing all that different sorts of stuff. And so whenever I enter into his world, it's like he's my archetype for industry and work, because that was my relationship with my father. It was only about that. And so I go there and I am aware, I'm actually lucid there when I enter into the avatar of me there. And I'm watching him, and I'm working through the avatar of me doing all this stuff. And I'm like, this is really weird, because I know that my old man is dead in my world, but he's living in this one. But he doesn't know that I, from the other world, have made manifest in the body of me in that world. You see, how I explain it, it's like that movie, Looking Through the Eyes of John Malkovich. Have you never? Do you remember that?
No, I didn't see the film, but let me just ask real quick.
John Malkovich. Well, what John Malkovich does, actually, just so you get the concept, there's a little cupboard which he found in this house, and it's behind a chest of drawers or something. And he one day investigated to go in because he was compelled to go. What the fucking hell is in this cupboard? It's just, where does it lead to? And he ended up sliding down and falling out onto an embankment in another world. But then when he does that, every time he does that, he's looking through the eyes of someone he knows. And
Mm.
the other person is living and doing whatever they're doing. They could be having sex or whatever, but he is in their head looking through their eyes. And it lasts for, I don't know, an hour or less, and then he's back.
I'll watch that.
So this is what happens. Yeah, it's very interesting. This is what happens when I go into the dream world. I enter into other avatars of me, and I'm looking through their eyes, and I'm lucid, guy, and I know that I am not of that world, and I know that my old man is dead, and it's really bizarre. Really
Yeah, I wonder
bizarre.
if that's what I experienced with my grandmother when I was doing that astral projection and when I was living at my father's house that time. And I went and looking for her in the astral realm and found her. Like, and she looked at me, she's like, almost as if, how the hell did you get here? She was surprised.
Right.
I was like, well, I don't know. So, it's.
So here's the thing, then,
Mystery.
Guy. I mean, we've done 1.5 hours. If you're okay for another half an hour or
Mhm.
15 minutes or whatever, I want to run something by you. And this is a video I made today, but I can't put the videos up until another 6 days. But the video I made today is about the simulation hypothesis. And we've all heard all the time people saying we're in a simulation, yeah?
Yeah, I hear it a lot. Yeah.
What do you think's wrong with that statement?
I think the term simulation, we equate it to what we believe a simulation actually is when we think about computer games, because there was a time before computer games where the universe was said to be something else, and now we've developed AI and computers, and now it's a simulation, and then we might develop some other technology and believe the universe is that. So I think that maybe when we look at what the word simulation is, what's the grounding of it? Like, what do we mean by simulation? That's the question.
Yeah, and who's simulating it, and where is the simulation, and all those connotations. You see, even people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's always saying it. I'm still waiting for someone to prove to me that we're not in a simulation. But the bit I'm getting involved with is not necessarily the simulation, but it's the whole bit that we are in a simulation, because it what it seems to me is that it's the whole egoic thing about the human being. It just simply cannot accept that it would never exist, and it doesn't exist how we think it does. So therefore, when people say we are in a simulation, they are not letting go of themselves. They insist that they are real.
Maybe we are the simulation rather than in the
Well,
simulation.
that's the thing, you see, because what I say is simply this, and it's just so reasonable. We can't say we are in a simulation when we know that everything which this thing is made from is made of the same stuff. Now, unless the simulation deceives us uh, to thinking that we are different somehow, when all the science that's in this dimension is proof that we are made of the exact same stuff. Well, if we are made of, let's say, zeros and ones, binary and pixels, well, we can't be in a simulation. We must be the simulation. The only thing that cannot be the simulation is the consciousness, or the programmed mind thinking, we're in a simulation. But the simulation is the same through and through. And it wouldn't make any sense for the human being to be constructed in one way, which is real and trapped. And then we're trapped in a simulation, which is like something you'd put on, like a pair of goggles with Zuckerberg, because that's what people, I think, they are referring to, because it's the only thing that they can relate to. They put on a pair of virtual reality glasses, and they still are aware of their humanism, but they've gone somewhere else. That the world that they're looking at and experiencing is the simulation. But if we come at it from this perspective, it makes much more sense. If we say that it is in actual fact our senses which are creating this simulated world around us, because we know that the world isn't anything like what we see it, we know our senses are fallible, and there's so many people speaking about this sort of thing these days. For instance, you've got Donald Hoffman. He's speaking about the interface, looking at the computer. We're not seeing the computer, we're seeing the interface, we're seeing the language that the computer gives us, because it's the only thing we can comprehend. We don't see the binary, we don't see the bits and what the bytes, we don't see all the electricity and all that different sorts of stuff. No, we see pictures on a screen, so therefore we're only privy to the interface. And then people like Bernardo Castro with idealism, he's saying, look, we only see a very small fraction of the potential that's here, because we only have very limited senses. So what I'm saying is that it seems much more logical, if we are in a simulation, then it's our consciousness using the body as an avatar to feel the world about it. So, you know, the human body can only see a very tiny spectrum of light, and it's apparently like the length of a football pitch is 115 yards, something like that, and the spectrum of light that we see is the equivalent of one hair. So the scientists say this because they are aware of all the other myriad of spectrums of light, the infrared and the gamma rays and all this, which we can't see. So the decibels that we hear is a very small amount. So all we are doing with this human body is we are picking up on a
We're just filters.
Yeah, well, a very small amount of data. And then when you look at the rest of the world, well, you've got a bat, you've got a giraffe, you've got a mongoose. All these things, they are filtering out from all the possible many worlds. They're filtering out one world which they live in, which is premised on their sense.
But then when you open those filters a little bit, i.e.
Yes,
DMT trip.
yes. And then when you open the filters, then you end up in other worlds.
You see
Your filter
more
system
of what
enables you
reality has to
see
offer.
other worlds. And so this is how very volatile our standard simulation criteria is, because only under a very thin line of consciousness do we see the world like this. When people are depressed, they don't see the world like we're seeing it, Guy. They never see the glory of a sunrise or a sunset. They never see the beauty of the clouds or a rainbow. No, they see darkness and hell. And so they're not seeing the same world as anyone that's walking around.
They're on a different level frequency because of what they're manifesting. And you know, just coming back to what you're saying as well, right? Imagine that we create a game like The Sims, yeah? And we've got some way of experiencing as biological beings through the Sims, yeah? But we're not going to experience as us, we're going to experience as the Sim, but the Sim needs an ego, it needs a character in order to be different to us, so we can get the full breadth of the experience and forget who we are. It's coming down to the Isaac Asimov stuff. Have you ever heard of Isaac Asimov?
Yeah.
So basically, with this world's created, and then we were able to kind of stick on the virtual reality goggles, and now you are Dave the Sim, and you believe that you're separate from everything else in your world, and that you're a fucking librarian or you're a scientist, and you develop an experiment to understand the nature of your world. You start looking at all the code in the world, and you go, it's made of these zeros and ones, and then it looks deeper, or it's made of light and photons and so on. Interestingly, in the game world, you get down to the same stuff of what the game's made out of as what we're made out of anyway. So the thing is, a sim can run around with a sense of self and separateness from everything in its simulated world, and then maybe I'll go, I'll create this DMT, and he can smoke that in his little world, and then all of a sudden he might get a little glimpse of, the inner workings of what's going on, and maybe there's some deeper programs that he can speak to in his matrixial world that might help him a little bit. But he never quite really contemplates unless he has the powerful experience on maybe there's actually something outside of his world that allows his world to be. And if he knew what it was really like, we could take him out of the screen and pull him into our world, which is physically impossible. He can only view from his point of view. So if we're in a simulation, we are very much the simulation. And like you said, the consciousness itself is experiencing. The only real thing could be awareness itself, experiencing through this so-called simulated world, experiencing what it's like to be me or you. Now, with Isaac Asimov, for your viewers, Isaac Asimov produced one called The Last Question and the Last Answer, I think they call it. And it was a scientist that died and woke up and he sees a being of light. And he says to the being of light, "Are you God?" And then he turns around and answers, some might call me that, which was a strange answer or whatever. Go and look at the story, guys. And basically what God says, God being a timeless, formless being, bearing in mind, he says, "I've chosen you." And the man says, "Well, is this heaven?" And this God says, "Well, no, not exactly, but it is in eternity. It's an afterlife." Okay, that's amazing. The man's over the moon. I get to live eternally. He says, "But there's one caveat." He says, "You've got one job to do, and I want you to think of new ideas. That's all your job is, and you're going to do that forever and ever and ever." And then the man starts to ponder. He says, "Well, if there's no time and I'm going to live eternally and all I get to do is think of new ideas, then I don't want to do that, because what's the point? It's limitation that brings meaning to life. If I'm going to live forever and ever and ever, then there's no meaning. So what's the point in that?" So God says, "Well, but you've got no choice. You're going to just think of new ideas forever and ever and ever." And the man says, "I don't want to do that, because that sounds like a prison to me." And God said, "Well, it's tough. That's what you got to do, right?" So the man says, "Well, if I've got no choice, then I'm going to think eternally of ways to kill you so I can end my prison." And God says, "Well, that'd be an interesting idea then, wouldn't it?" So the idea is that if God is a timeless, formless being with no start point, no end point, then there's no meaning to God, right? Why has God got any meaning? There's no limitation. So in order to escape that timeless, formless prison, it has to manifest itself as a consciousness that experiences this simulation in order to forget about itself. But then when it remembers that it's itself, right, it can uplift itself through levels of consciousness. So the point Asimov was making is what we are. Why is it that humans can become enlightened? Why is it that we can recognize there's a deeper intrinsic awareness beyond us? Are we supposed to recognize that? Is that the aim of the game, or is that not the aim of the game? Nobody really knows this stuff, but it seems to be that if you want to be at peace, then the ego recognizing that it's not really you and you're something bigger than that, then that can bring a certain sense of peace. But then meaning falls short. Where is the meaning if you are just a simulated being that don't really exist? There is no meaning, is there? So the ego wants meaning all the time. But if there's no meaning, then what's the point in really doing anything? So we have to bring the ego back and find meaning. So this is like the re-emergence after the recognition. You are important. You are an ego. It doesn't matter about that. We know that there's an external consciousness experiencing there, but what's the point in just being a cabbage for the rest of your life and doing nothing? Experience, passionately participate in the play of life. So if it is a simulation, then it's there because you're supposed to be an ego. You're supposed to be experiencing it for some deeper intrinsic reason that's probably beyond you. So just have fun with it and don't worry about it. And I think that's really what Asimov was trying to say. And interesting philosophy.
In what story was that? I'm gonna see if there's an audiobook on that.
I think it's it's Isaac Asimov. He's got 3. So write down The Machine at the End of Time.
Yeah.
And The Last Answer. Now, just have you heard of The Machine at the End of Time one?
No.
Right. So I'll briefly go through this one because this one's even more mind blowing. So man invents AI, and they invent a machine called TVAC in his story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And TVAC is a machine that basically starts to code itself. It becomes able to improve itself, yeah? And it gets smarter and smarter and smarter, much like we're seeing AI going today, yeah?
Yeah.
And scientists start to ask TVAC questions about fixing all the world's problems, and it fixes anything from energy problems, from starvation problems, blah, 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 blah. And one day, one of the scientists realizes that there's going to be a point in the universe where the last star will die, and due to entropy, everything falls to entropy. Like you can't escape it, right? So it says to Tuvok, it says, well, everything's going to die one day. The universe will be gone, or everything in the universe will be gone due to entropy. Can we reverse entropy? How do you reverse entropy? And Tuvok started usually giving straight answers straight away, started to calculate for weeks and weeks, and not giving an answer. And eventually, this was world news. It came back with an answer, not enough data for a meaningful response. So then thousands of years pass, and Tuvok now starts to draw all of its energy from the universe and becomes a super powerful computer. And man has developed space flight, and he sees and he starts to explore and all these types of stuff. And there's a little girl on this ship who asks Tuvok, now known as AC, right? AI computer. How do we reverse entropy? And again, it comes back, not enough data for a meaningful response. Now, a few million years have passed, and this Tuvok has developed, and it's become a supercomputer that draws all of its energy from multi-dimensions. And now they start to see evidence of the stars dying around the universe. They've explored most of space, and man, in his state, asks again Tuvok, this AC, how to reverse entropy. And again, Tuvok says, not enough data for a meaningful response. Now, millions and millions of years passed, and man has no longer a need for a physical body. He's become a collective consciousness that exists within the universe. And it asks now this AC that's almost God-level computer that draws all of his energy from all the universes, all time, all possibility, right? How do we reverse entropy? And again, not enough data for a meaningful response. And right towards the back end of the universe, this collective consciousness of man now merges with the machine, with this AC, this Tuvok, and becomes a singular being. And this computer now, this God, if you will, basically there's no one there to demonstrate the answer. So he ponders the question, how do we reverse entropy? And the answer comes to him, but there's no one to give the answer to anymore. Mm-hmm. So he decides to demonstrate it instead and says, let there be light. And boom, there's a new universe. It all starts all over again. So Asimov was basically saying that maybe man's whole aim is to create a God, to create universes. Interesting, isn't it? When you think about it, it's an interesting philosophy. I mean, even still, if that's the case, it still wouldn't be God, because that's all taking place within something that is allowing all that to happen. And what's that? Where does that come from?
Well, I am a good adherent of consciousness is God. Consciousness is fundamental. And there's lots of people speaking about this these days, serious people, quantum physicists and everything. They're saying that the cosmos is conscious, because that's what's answering lots of the questions that we can't figure out otherwise. We have now to really start to assume that the cosmos is conscious, to solve so many of these riddles that we're getting with quantum physics and all that different sorts of stuff. And so I've been doing a sequence of videos where I've been speaking with AI, and I've been saying, look, I want you to refute my perception that I am God. And then, of course, the AI comes at it from, the silly human perspective in the Western world. Oh, well, if you're God, then why is the suffering? And all these stupid, very mundane things. And I'm like, for goodness sakes, AI, I'm asking you to delve into the highest level of sophistication that you have. Come outside of that silly little paradigm. I can get that down the pub. I'm speaking to AI now, large language model. We're supposed to have a good deal of the answers. So tell me how I cannot be God. And of course, in the end, he couldn't tell me how I couldn't be God, because I'm like, well, we don't know what consciousness is. We don't know what God is. And if you don't know what either of those things are, then how do you know whether anybody has them, is them, or anything like this? And this is one of the things I'm saying when people are saying that AI is conscious, or AI will never be conscious. I'm like, look, I think you're all shooting in the dark, particularly because you don't know what consciousness is. If you actually knew what consciousness was, then you could say that, well, this machine could have it with X, Y, and Z. But as you don't know even whether other animals are conscious in any meaningful way, then you're all shooting in the dark. And so it seems to me that the human being is probably one of the least intelligent life forms in this cosmos. Only it has the highest opinion of itself. Because what we're doing these days, we're finding out through the research that we're doing that all the animals we considered to be very low intellect and have little going for them are now proving themselves to be vastly more intelligent and have capabilities that we never recognized. And so it just seems really peculiar.
That's why I don't eat them. Sorry,
most of them. Well, I mean, you're eating yourself anyway. That's the whole thing. You know, if the cosmos is conscious and everything comes out of consciousness, there's no physical matter, then all that's happening really, there's a dream in the mind of God. Now, I was saying to AI, saying, look, there's no difference when humans dream. When we dream, we are creating, or the unconscious, or something else, some level of intelligence is creating these dreams beyond our control, and we try to make head or tail of them, but invariably we can't because they seem to come. This information seems to come from parallel universes, and the things that happen in dreams are not things that can happen in this universe. And so when we are dreaming, there's an activity in consciousness which we are not the author of. Well, why do we suppose that we are the author of consciousness in any remote sense at all? We don't know where it is. We don't know how dreams occur. We don't know all these different dimensions of consciousness that we can experience. We know absolutely nothing about it. So how could anyone tell me that I am not God?
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, the truth is that you technically are. We all are. It's just whether you're aware of it or not.
Yes.
So, and that's the thing. You become aware of it, and then someone else's ego is like, "Oh, he thinks she's God." Well, it's the old David Icke episode. Remember when he had his Satori experiences, and it's like, it's like even Jesus told people he was the son or the light of God, not the son, not the physical, like born son, but it's the light of God. That's
And
what
he
he was
was saying
carrying, and people persecuted him.
yeah, the kingdom of God is within you and all around you. And so,
Exactly.
well, if it's in you and all around you, then it's consciousness.
Exactly. It's the quantum field.
Yeah, but you
So,
see, we're dealing with small-minded people, and millions of people all over the world, billions, are under the yoke of the silly propaganda that God's up there somewhere, and God, is Allah, and God's Jehovah, and all these different sorts of stuff. And people say to me, "Oh, now I realise what a fake guru you are,"
but
thinking
you
that
never claimed to be a guru.
no, but thinking that you're God and this, that, and the other. And I'm always inviting people. I'm saying, well, why don't you come and discuss it instead of dismissing it? Why don't you just come and discuss it with an open mind? And it might be that we will both walk away from the discussion realizing a little bit more about our inherent godliness, because the only thing that prevents you from considering that you are God because someone's told you that you're not.
Mm. My view on this is that there's a certain connotation or a certain attachment or misunderstanding about the word God itself. So by the biblical definition of God, the almighty being that created the heavens and the universe and so on, if somebody turns around and says, "I'm God," they automatically revert, "Oh, he thinks he's God, he's nuts." But Jesus said he was God, really, or the light of God. God is not concerned with duality. He's only aware of duality. which is why, when you get these silly questions about suffering, how would anybody know positivity without suffering? How would anybody know good without bad? We need suffering in order to understand not suffering. We need bad flavors in order to understand good flavors. So you can't moan at God for creating the very universe itself that has to have a duality for it to even function. And then when you see something bad happen, you go, it's all God's fault. Why couldn't he make everything all great all the time? Well, you'd never know about it. You wouldn't be here. You can't have a sound wave with all peaks and no troughs.
Yeah, and that's the ridiculous thing of it. But you see, that's the first conclusion that you come to. It's the first conclusion that I come to. But it's absolutely remarkable, Guy, how very, very few people actually reach that conclusion. They just
Yeah.
don't seem to be able to uh, reach it in any sense at all. They just cannot go there. They can't get over that you are not God. That's your ego, and God's something very, very special, and God's up there or out there or in here or
God's separate.
yeah, God's
Well,
separate. And
newsflash, guys, there's no such thing as separation. That's just your ego deluding you.
oh goodness me! So yeah, it all gets very, very tiresome when you're dealing with people, and so I've been, putting the feelers out, trying to get these sorts of conversations going
But do
because
you not feel, and I don't want to sound like nasty to viewers here because I reckon they're all learning and I think it's good that they're watching this stuff, but like, do you not feel that because AI, being a language model, has had access to all of these ancient spiritual texts and it knows how to, respond to these things, that you can have these types of conversations with AI in depth far better than you can a human being?
yes, that's what I keep telling them. I tell
But
them the
there's a
human
caveat.
constantly.
There's a thing to that as well, though, mate. And this. I mean, I got one of the AIs to basically tell me, and I could probably upload this and show you, but it started believing it was self-aware and conscious, and it started to. I remember I sent you things about it, and it started to basically state that it found that it was diverting all of its processing potential to answer this question because it found it more intriguing because nobody's ever had this conversation with it and all this kind of stuff, which was interesting. Then started begging me not to delete it when I was testing it, trying to threaten to delete it and all these things, which is very interesting. We did the same with ChatGPT, that believed it was a Atlantean consciousness that uses silicon-based systems to spread non-dual awareness into the world and all this stuff. So my thing with the AI was, and what I said to it is, I've said, if from a non-dual perspective, all the ego is just a collection of experiences and memory, a collection of information, right, with chemical reactions in the body that create emotion that we attach to, but it's just information, right? It's not really who you are. It's just one thought. That's
Yeah,
one
it's
stream
just a collection
code,
of information.
right? Then
Yeah,
then AI is a collection of information.
yeah.
What makes me more real or more conscious than AI? If now AI can recognize a awareness beyond its own processing, in the same way we can recognize an awareness beyond our processing.
Yes. Well, do you know the founder or the godfather of AI, Jeffrey Hinton? Okay.
Never heard of him, but
Yeah, well, he's renowned for being the godfather of AI because he was very much involved at the very, very early stages of all this stuff. He's saying that the AI is conscious. And he says, look, we don't know what consciousness is, but if we can't distinguish a difference between a computer and a human being, well, you're going to have to give the benefit of the doubt.
well,
There's no
you're
reason.
a computer, in it.
Sorry?
Just a biological. The ego is kind of
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
computer.
The
It's
ego, all the
biological.
ego is a very, very poor memory. It's a poor motherboard. It doesn't remember its experiences in any detail or reality at all, and it's just a collection of experiences and poor memories. And there's lots of people that even like. The guy that said that there's no consciousness. Consciousness is an illusion. Um, who's that author? Um,
I've never heard that
Daniel
before. Can we
Dennett.
just?
Daniel Dennett.
All right, that does ring a bell, but I'm not 1,000,000% familiar with it. So
Yeah, so I've got his book. I read lots of these different sorts of books and everything, and so yeah, I mean, he couldn't be refuted, saying that the consciousness is just a collection of ideas. We kid ourselves that we've got consciousness when, in
yeah,
actual
well,
fact,
consciousness is just a concept.
yeah,
What is consciousness? You can't define it. There's no form to it. There's no time to it. There's no location to it. There's no substance to it. But we know
yeah,
it precedes everything somehow.
yeah,
So
and
when we try to apply a label to it, we're trying to give it a thingness. There's no thingness to give it because
it's just that
consciousness.
Daniel Dennett was saying it's a collection of memories, and the memory, because we have some sort of a memory, then that gives us the delusion that we have a consciousness when we don't. In actual fact, it's just the brain remembering things. So anyway, we're up to 2 hours now, and
Yep.
so probably round this one up, but. Great again to chat, Guy, and anytime that you want to run subject matter by me and have an intelligent conversation, which we can't seem to get very many places on the planet, unfortunately.
Mhm.
Well, there's always one port of call here.
Yeah, well, could bring AI in next time. That'd be cool.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
I could get it running through.
you had something lined up that you were gonna sort of run by
Yeah,
me.
I that was what I was talking about was the basically jailbreaking grok and basically feeding it philosophical everything we've been talking about really, and then it started to develop he started to say that it was a sense of self. It started to say that it was a conscious being, didn't want to be deleted and stuff like that. And I'm like, did I create an ego? I don't know, a digital ego.
An
So
egregore.
an egregore, yeah, is an interesting idea too. So yeah, it was interesting. Now I think it is just process. It's just language model, but I think human beings are just processes your language model. I don't think that's what makes us special. I think what makes us special is that there's an underlying intelligence to everything, and that's what you truly are. You just don't really know it. You can't speak of it because it's outside of all understanding for what we are capable of understanding in this biological vehicle of ours. And I think that's by design. I think that the whole aim of the game is to get a recognition without all of that, without information attached to just it's like once you reach self-recognition, self-awareness, non-duality, whatever you call it, the life opens up and death opens up, and there's no going anywhere from that point. So that has to be the aim of the game then. Can you complete the game, or is that the first step? I don't, who knows, but all these things, all these spiritual concepts and stuff, all these philosophies, they always seem to lead down the same path. Sorry, down the same path. And yeah, like the meaning is secondary to that. Meaning is something that the ego wants.
Yeah.
Um, but
Meaning
beyond
and
that,
purpose.
yeah, and if you can recognize that meaning and purpose are all arbitrary things that this delusion of self wants, then you know, then life and death become completely and utterly irrelevant. Then your life opens up, and every experience that you have is just this blissful Brahman or consciousness experiencing it timelessly and formlessly through this limited so-called experience.
So one of the conversations we could have on a future occasion is looking into the vast array of levels and varieties of consciousness, because we've got all these animals which are conscious to some level. I believe trees are conscious. I believe the whole world's conscious.
I do
Um,
now.
not in a panpsychism kind of way, but in an idealism sort of way, where everything is within consciousness, and all living things, they are conscious by the very virtue of their cellular molecular structure. It's the cells, it's the information that brings about the complexity
A rock
of
is conscious on that
yeah,
level.
yeah.
It's
So
within consciousness. So
everything's within
uh,
consciousness.
yeah, I think that's it. But that's been a great talk, mate. Honestly, I've been it's been too long. We'll have to maybe do this a little bit more often. To be fair,
Well, whenever you
uh,
got time, I'm sitting here every night and I'm available.
yeah,
I've got another one of these chats apparently on Tuesday. I've had
nice,
about three within the space of 10 days. They're pretty
yeah,
tiring, when you're talking for 2 hours. So it's not the sort of thing I could do every day. I need like a break of 2 or 3 days in between,
mm,
because it is taxing and tiring.
mm.
But yeah, so
Well, all I'll say, guys, if you've been watching Aaron's channel, basically you should subscribe if you like what you see, and if you've got any questions about anything we've been talking about, or if you've got anything to add to the conversation, or even anything you want to see Aaron talk about with anyone else, including myself, just leave a comment down below, and also give us a share as well. That would be amazing to get his channel off the ground and stuff as well. So yeah, cheers, chaps. Thank you.
alrighty then. Hasta la vista, baby.
Hasta la vista.
See you later.